In the silent theater of our souls, a shadow dances not as an enemy, but as a hidden architect, an unseen force casting reflections onto the faces of those around us. What if I told you that the very person you accuse of betrayal, weakness, or folly is but a canvas of the darkness you refuse to acknowledge within yourself? The world you think you inhabit is not the world at all, but a mirror twisted by your own desires and fears, a labyrinth where the minotaur you chase is, in fact, the beast you shelter in your chest. Have you ever wondered why the flaws you detest in others ignite a fire so fierce it blinds reason itself? Perhaps because those reflections are not accidents but secret indictments, whispers from your own shadow screaming to be heard. Imagine a mirror shattered into countless shards, each fragment a distorted truth, yet together composing a grotesque mosaic of self-deception. We cast these fragments outward, projecting our shadows onto the surfaces of strangers, lovers, friends, only to be horrified by the images we see, never daring to question their origin. What the hatred, envy, or disdain you feel is nothing but the shadow you refuse to name, the hidden fracture of your own soul bleeding unseen. In the silent play of light and darkness, the greatest torment is not the enemy without, but the exile within, lurking where consciousness fears to tread. What beneath every accusation lies a confession, and beneath every judgment a trembling secret. The projection is a masquerade of our inner abyss, an echo that deceives both the self and the other, binding us in invisible chains forged by denial and fear. To unravel this enigma is to confront the void that we habitually cast away, the shadow that yearns not for destruction but for recognition. Can you bear to look beyond the veil of your perceptions and find that the other is but the fragmented silhouette of your own becoming? There is a cruel irony in how we seek salvation in others while drowning in the unacknowledged darkness we project upon them. Like Narcissus gazing into the pool, entranced by a reflection both beguiling and alien, we fail to see the abyss staring back, an abyss that is our own. The act of projection is a sacred dance of self-deception and revelation, a paradox where we both create and destroy the reality we inhabit. What truths lie hidden in this dance? And what price must be paid to reclaim the shadow and with it, the lost fragments of self? The key lies not in shattering the mirror, but in embracing the reflections we fear, in stepping to the labyrinth of our own shadow without faltering. For only by daring to inhabit the darkness can the light of authentic understanding dawn. Will you walk this perilous path and confront the silhouette you have cast into the world? Or will you remain prisoner to the illusions of projection, forever haunted by the shadows you refuse to name? In the shadows' quiet conspiracy, we find ourselves at once hunter and hunted, the line between self and other dissolved into a murmur of tremors beneath our skin. How many times have you felt the sting of another's gaze, sharp and accusing, only to realize too late that it is the echo of your own fracture reverberating through the air? The soul is a restless wilderness, and within its depths the shadow waits, patient, hungry, a secret guardian of what we refuse to admit. Yet, it is not a mere specter to be banished, but a sacred witness to the unbearable truths we exile from the dawn of consciousness. When we cast our shadow on the other, we enact a sacred betrayal, a theft of self so subtle it hides behind every whispered judgment, every flash of rage, every silent recoil from what we see in their eyes. Are you certain that the darkness you perceive is theirs alone? Or does it bleed from your own veins, a poison you unwittingly offer as a gift to the world? This act of projection is a trembling dance on the knife's edge of self-awareness and madness, where the boundaries of identity dissolve like mist under the sun. We construct our enemies with the shards of our own soul, those fragmented fears and desires too raw to face directly. The mirror shatters not in the violence of shattering, but in the quiet shiver of recognition that our tormentors are but exiles of the self, screaming from a hidden abyss. Have you ever felt that sudden, inexplicable fury towards someone, a rage so disproportionate burns like fire in your bones? That fire is a shadow calling, demanding attention, a visceral summons from the parts of yourself you have locked away in darkness, in silence, in shame. What if the liberation you seek lies not in condemning the other, but in plunging into this very inferno, in gathering the scattered fragment of your soul and facing the abyss with open eyes? Yet, this confrontation is no simple passage, but a spiral descending ever deeper into the subterranean chambers of the psyche, where light is scarce and truth wears a mask of terror. To meet the shadow is to meet oneself without the armor of illusion, to bear witness to the chaos hidden beneath the veneer of control. What horrors wait there? What lost memories? What buried desires? What wounds have we sealed with a mortar denial? The shadow is the silent language of the unconscious, the eloquence of what has been repressed and disavowed. To deny it is to walk with one eye closed in a world of darkness, stumbling, falling into the same traps, the same patterns, the same anguish. But to embrace it, this is to reclaim a power so profound it shakes the very foundations of being, a power that dissolved the walls between self and other, that unites us in a fragile vulnerability of shared human fracture. Can you surrender to this descent, knowing that on the other side lies a truth both terrifying and exquisite? In this dance of light and shadow, we discover the paradox of human existence, the simultaneous desire for control and the inevitability of chaos, the yearning for purity and the necessity of embracing the impure. The projection is a crucible where these forces collide, a battleground where we fight shadows and ourselves. But the shadow is not merely an adversary. It is the hidden architect of our becoming, the dark seed from which the flower of authenticity blooms. What would happen if you ceased your war against the shadows you cast? What if instead you tended them, listened to their silent plea, and allowed them to teach you what you have long forgotten? The rupture happens not when shadow is defeated, but when it is embraced, a wound opened not to bleed but to heal. Will you dare to bleed into your own shadow, to let the pain carve a new landscape within? This journey is not for the faint of heart, for it demands a courage that unravels the very fabric of identity and weaves it anew. To project is to deny, but to reclaim is to transform. The shadow waits not as a curse, but as a promise, a beckoning toward a self that is whole only when fragmented, illuminated only when plunged into darkness. Will you remain a prisoner of illusions, forever haunted by phantoms not your own? Or will you rise as the alchemist of your own soul, transmuting shadow into light, chaos into creation, fracture into profound wholeness that awaits beyond fear? The path unfolds before you, obscured yet radiant, a riddle whose answer lies buried in the silence between your thoughts, in the trembling of your breath, in the shadow you have yet to name. And so, as the final breath of this journey trembles in the air, something within you has shifted subtly, irreversibly. The faces that once triggered your anger may no longer carry the same threat. Perhaps now you see they were never your enemies, but silent messengers from an inner labyrinth you've always avoided exploring. What once seemed external revealed itself to be a mirror, and the mirror does not lie. It merely reflects what you have not yet dared to embrace. There is no end when the shadow is touched. Only a beginning disguised as silence. The world outside remains the same, and yet something in it feels different, because it is you who now sees with different eyes. And in facing that inverted reflection, you may come to understand that the other was never the problem. The true confrontation was never with someone else's words, actions, or flaws, but with something within you that needed to be hidden in order to one day be found. The shadow that once felt like a curse reveals itself as a seed. It only needed darkness to begin growing. You may still feel fear. That's okay. Fear is the soul's language when it is about to shed an old skin. And if for a moment you can inhabit that fear instead of fleeing from it, something sacred happens. You begin to see the other as an exiled part of yourself. In that moment, true compassion is born. Not the kind that masks pain and moral superiority, but the kind that recognizes in the other's gaze the same abyss you carry in your chest. You don't have to understand everything right now. The shadow never demanded understanding, only presence. The wound doesn't ask for explanation, but for the courage to be touched without judgment. The mirror is in your hands, and the question that echoes is not about what you see, but whether you have the courage to keep looking. Not at the other, but at yourself, when the other can no longer carry your pain. Freedom is not in lighting everything, but in accepting that there is beauty even in the half-light. And when, in the silence of tomorrow, you find yourself remembering something you can't quite name, feeling something you can't quite describe, you'll know the seed was planted. And now, even without knowing it, you are already different. If this touched you, share it, not out of habit, but because someone, perhaps very close to you, needs this mirror as much as you did. Like, comment, subscribe, but only if you feel that something here spoke to the part of you the world still can't see. Because this journey doesn't end here. It only just began to see, through you, what once lived hidden.